All right, hey everybody, welcome back to another video. I am back. The experiment is over. I got my lights back, so here we are with the video. And hey, my Yang merch came. Got the hat. I got my Vote Yang shirt, which I am not wearing right now. But hey, the cap is here. All right, so let's get started with what we're here for. We have two new wide releases coming out last weekend, and they are The Gentleman, which is a Guy Ritchie gangster film, and the horror movie The Turning. Let's see how those movies did at the box office. Alright, before we get to those, let's jump right into the box office with the top movie last weekend, and that is Bad Boys for Life, which is aka Bad Boys 3, starring Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. In its second weekend, the movie dropped about 46% from its opening weekend to pull in 34 million. Estimated figures, by the way, these are. And let's see, domestic gross so far for this movie is 121 million, and overseas it pulled in an additional 95 million for a worldwide total of 215 million. The budget is 90 million, so it's actually doing very good. I mean, this is a movie that I said probably wouldn't open that high because Bad Boys 2 was released back in 2003. Lots of years passed, and like I said, Will Smith's recent movies haven't been doing as well as when he was at his peak, right? And I thought that, Bad Boys for Life is might not open as huge, might not be as huge as Bad Boys 2, but it did way better, right? I said the movie could probably open somewhere in the 20 to 25 million range, but hey, it surprised me. It opened to about 62 million, and it's doing pretty well at the box office. Second weekend, the drop off is not that huge, right? It's sub 50s, which is actually pretty good for a movie in the second weekend. Reviews wise, it's actually pretty good, 77% on Rotten Tomatoes and an A cinema score. So professional critic and the general audience or kind of in agreement right there. So expect Bad Boys for Life to be a top movie, this coming weekend as well. All right, let's move on to number 2, which is 1917. That's the Sam Mendes war movie. In its fifth weekend, expanded, right? Because it opened during the Christmas holidays to qualify for award season, and this movie is getting its awards bump. It won Best Pictures from, I believe it was the Golden Globes, right? And then it won the DGA Best Director for 1917. So the momentum is with 1917 for the Oscars. And in its fifth weekend, it dropped 21%. Like I said, the awards bump is here to pull in about 15.8 million in its fifth weekend. Domestic gross so far is 104 million, and additional 96 million for a worldwide total of 200 million. Yeah, the budget for the movie is supposedly around 90 million, so it's actually doing very well here and worldwide. The budget for this movie is reportedly 90 million or so. So this is actually doing pretty well at the box office. All right, let's move on to number 3, which is Dolittle. In its second weekend, this movie pulled in about 12.5 million, drop off about 43%. It's pretty low as well, except that it didn't open well. This movie opened to 22 million, which is decent, but when you take a look at the budget, which is 175 million, a 22 million opening is actually not that good, right? It needs to open in the like 50s maybe or so, right? And the reviews are not helping this movie any, right? 16% on the tomato meter, which is pretty low, right? Probably the lowest movie thus far on Rotten Tomatoes this year. And then a B cinema score. So the audience, the target audience, children liked it, right? But the critics, who tend to be older, generally just panned it. So how is it doing domestically? So domestically, is in its only second weekend, it grows about 45 million, and overseas it put in an additional 46 million for a worldwide total of 91 million. So remember, the budget is 175 million. You typically need to pull in like double your budget worldwide for the movie to break even, right? And it's a long way from break even. So Dolittle will turn out to be one of the bombs of 2020. All right, number 4, we're getting to the new releases last weekend. That is the Guy Ritchie gangster movie, The Gentleman. Like I said, this is a throwback to his previous movies before he hit it big with the blockbusters, right? Let's say this movie I say could probably open to about 10 million because like I said, his indie movies are kind of niche, and it opened just around right there. It pulled in an estimated 11 million in this opening weekend. Reviews wise, I'm surprised that it's actually that well reviewed at 72% on the tomato meter and a B+ cinema score. So reviews there is surprising to me because I'm not exactly a Guy Ritchie fan, but there are those who like his previous movies, which catapult him to direct these big blockbusters. This movie stars Matthew McConaughey, Charlie Hunnam, Michelle Dockery, Colin Farrell, and Hugh Grant, as well as Henry Golding. About let's say gangsters, and I guess it's doing as well as it could. I mean, the budget is around 20 million or so, so this 11 million opening is actually pretty good, and let's see how well it'll do in the second weekend. It could drop huge in the second weekend, but the reviews, the good reviews, will probably help it somewhat. Alright, let's move on to number 5, and just Jumanji, The Next Level. And in its 7th weekend, it pulled in about 7.9 million, roughly 8 million. Drop off is actually pretty low, around 18% or so. Let's see the domestic gross. Domestic gross for this movie is 283 million, with an additional 454 million overseas, for a worldwide total of 737 million. The budget for The Next Level is 125 million, so obviously it's actually doing very well worldwide. Alright, number 6 is the other new release last weekend, and that is the horror movie The Turning. It pulled in 7.3 million in its opening weekend. This is a movie that I say would probably open somewhere between 5 to 8 million, and it opened just right there within that range. Reviews wise, it's actually pretty terrible, 12% on the tomato meter and F cinema score. So people who usually turn out for these horror movies are usually fan, and they give it an F, so which is pretty bad. Expect a huge drop off in the second weekend, by the way, because there is probably no word of mouth, or if there is, it's actually telling people to avoid this movie. This movie is directed by Flora Sigimodi, is that how you pronounce it? Who directed Christian Stewart in the Runaways a few years back. So this is pretty much a haunted house horror movie. It's based on Henry James's novel The Turn of the Screw. Beside Henry James's name, right? I mean, I don't see any attraction to this movie. If people are looking for horror movie, I mean, this might not be exactly the movie that they would turn out for, but considering it is a horror movie, 7.3 million is actually pretty decent. It just depends on the budget for this movie, right? And the budget is reportedly about 14 million. You'll find Second Life with the home videos, streaming, etc. Alright, number 7 is the latest Star Wars movies, Episode 9, Rise of the Skywalker. So in the sixth weekend, it pulled in about 5.2 million, drop off about 38% from the previous weekend. Let's see what the domestic gross so far is. Domestic gross is 501 million. Which is pretty good, but compared to the previous movies, is lagging. But what do you expect? It's already very profitable, right? Overseas, it pulled in an additional 545 million, for a worldwide total of about 1 billion. The budget for this movie is probably over 200 million. Since it is Star Wars. For comparison, right, the first movie in this latest trilogy, the Force Awakens, right, opened to 247 million, went on to make nearly $1 billion domestically, which is around 937 million domestically, and 2 billion worldwide, so which is very good, right? And then the sequel, The Last Jedi, opened to 220 million, went on to gross 620 million domestically and 1.3 billion worldwide. And as you know, they're gonna continue to milk this property, and they're gonna make another trilogy, another mainline trilogy. So look for that. All right, number 8 is the drama Little Woman. Is a movie based on Louisa May Alcott's novel. It's directed by Greta Gerwig. Right, it's well reviewed, 95% on the tomato meter, A- cinema score. In its 5th weekend, it pulled in about 4.7 million. Drop off is about 26 million. The drop off for last week's movie is actually pretty low. Domestically, it's at 94 million, and overseas, it pulled in an additional 53 million for a worldwide total of 147 million. Budget's 40 million, and it grows 147 million and counting, so it's doing pretty well. All right, number 9 is the drama Just Mercy. In its 5th weekend, it pulled in about 4 million. Just Mercy is a movie that stars Michael B. Jordan, Jimmy Fox, and Brie Larson. It's based on a true story about a Harvard graduate who went to Alabama to fight for the death row inmates after graduation from Harvard. And it's well reviewed, 84% on the tomato meter, A+ cinema score. So reviews are there for this movie. So this is one of this movie that had a platform release. It opened a couple of theaters, a couple of weeks, during around the Christmas holidays for award qualifications, and then expanded. During expansion, it pulled in about 10 million. That's its wide release. I thought this movie could probably open to 5 million during its expansion, but it double that, so it's actually doing pretty well. And let's see what its domestic gross is right now. Domestic gross is about 27 million, with overseas take of 3.4 million for a worldwide total of about 30.5 million. So if this movie costs around 15 to 20 million, it's actually doing decent, right? It's gonna probably find life on streaming as well, but this is more of an awards play. If it wins anything at the Oscars, I'm not sure if it's nominated for the Oscar at all, but if it does, it might get a small bump. I'm not up to date on the Oscars as of this moment. All right, let's close out the top 10 with Knives Out, which is a I guess a comedy, directed by Rian Johnson. Daniel Craig stars as this investigator who's called upon to investigate the death of this patriarch of this cookie family, and it did surprisingly well at the box office. In its 9th weekend, it's still in the top 10. It pulled in about 3.7 million. Drop off of about 15% from the previous weekend, so it's doing very well week over week. Domestic gross right now is 152 million, with additional overseas ticket of 135 million, for a worldwide total of 287 million and counting. Budget for this movie is only about 40 million. As if you haven't heard, they greenlit a sequel to this movie, so look toward that, since this movie is probably going to end up closing out in 300 million worldwide. They're obviously going to make a sequel. All right, so that's it for the box office top 10. Let's move on to the new releases this weekend. We're going to have 2 wide ones and a host of limited ones, right? So the 2 wide releases are Gretel and Hansel. You read that right. It's Gretel and Hansel, not Hansel and Gretel. So it's a play on the or adaptation of the Grimm's fairy tale, right? And then the rhythm section is the thriller starring Blake Lively and Jude Law. All right, let's start off with, I guess, the bigger of the 2 movies. That is Gretel and Hansel, right? Yeah, so if you've seen the trailer for this movie, it actually looks pretty good, right? Alex Craig stars as the witch, or the woman in this house, and Sophia Lillis as Gretel, and Samuel Lickley as Hansel. Yeah, so if you read the comment section on YouTube, on the trailer, people are making fun of the title, Gretel and Hansel. Normally it's Hansel and Gretel, but I guess as a play, with the title is Gretel and Hansel, I guess it's to separate it from the other Hansel and Gretel movies. And it's released by Orion Pictures, which is a subsidiary of MGM. Orion Pictures, way back when, in a previous incarnation before bankruptcy and all, produced the Terminator movies and a host of other big blockbusters. Trailer looks good. It's appropriately creepy. Alex Craig is here is pretty good. Stole the show as this witch, right? But and again, as with horror movies, it's pretty much hit and miss with the audience. This is more of a creepy movie, right? The trailer doesn't show much, but there are some promise of blood in a movie. If that is your thing. No reviews on Rotten Tomatoes right now. They're probably not going to have any reviews until later on today, or Thursday, which they usually embargo the movie. They usually embargo the reviews until Thursday, just to prevent any bad word of mouth. So how will this movie open to? Like I say, just from the trailer, I thought if you're looking for a horror movie and if the turning is not your cup of tea, right? I think Gretel and Hansel, it's actually a pretty good choice. Title aside, if you have a problem with the title, just get over it, right? So I think this movie is going to be the higher grossing movie of the two new releases. I think it's probably going to open somewhere in the 10 to 15 million range this weekend. All right, let's move on to our next new release, and that is the rhythm section. And if you go by the title, you expect this movie to be some sort of musical, hip hop, rap, whatever, the rhythm section, and not what we have on the screen. It stars Blake Lively, Jude Law. It's a revenge movie. Lively stars as a woman whose family was killed in a plane crash, and she found out that it's terrorism is involved. It's not because some failure. It's because a bomb went off, the plane crash killed her family, and she's out to look for the people who are responsible. So Blake Lively, I have to say, is not exactly an action star. She is not Linda Hamilton, for example. She is kind of playing against type in this movie. And if you look at the trailer, it's kind of confusing. There's nothing compelling in it, other than hey, it's Blake Lively and Jude Law in a movie, which you can skip, right? Nothing that draws you in unless you really like these two actors. So I think this movie is probably gonna open somewhere in the sub 10 million, probably in the between 5 and 10 million, somewhere between that. Just the names alone, right? I mean, they could probably pull some people in, but I expect this movie is gonna open somewhere in the 5 to 10 million range this weekend. All right, so that's it for this week's podcast. So I am back with my Yang merch and video. So for those of you who missed me, who missed seeing me, I'm back. Like I say, experiments are over. All right, so that's all I have for you. Until next time, take care. Bye bye.